Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Fisher, and this is our channel, our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. And I'm here with my co-host.
Janis, Gillham, Grady. G'day, everybody.
Good day, Janis. How you? I'm good. I'm good. It's cold here again, sweatshirted up, and rainy and cold here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I've got a heater on my feet, and the dogs are over there curled up, all nice and cozy. And I am ready to roll with our continuation of the Freewinds story
Absolutely.
with Scott and Karry.
Yeah, and it's a serious, just to let our viewers know, this is a serious story that we're going to tell, that Scott's going to tell. And actually, that's going to be a two-parter. Anyway, it'll come out relatively quickly, but you're going to want to hear both parts of the story. But without further ado, Janis, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests, and I'll bring them on.
Karry and Scott Campbell, welcome to Peeling the Onion.
Thank you very much.
Hi, guys.
Hi, guys. Nice to have you back on with us. I enjoy these. It brings back some good memories and some sour, bad memories. And that's why today, for this one, I'm drinking a margarita.
I've got my iced tea.
I got to calm down for this one.
Got your liquid courage there.
Right.
Anyway, just to reorient our viewers, I mean, we've interviewed Scott and Karry about life on the Freewinds, which is the Scientology ship that's down in the Caribbean, and they told stories about when they were, on the ships as crew members, what life was like on the crew on the ship, and those are on some earlier videos that we did. But for right now, we're going to talk about basically the story of how Scott and Karry eventually left the Freewinds Ship and then left Scientology and the Sea Organization, and that's what this story is about. Anyway, go ahead, Janis. You want to start? First thing we were going to talk about was about the fact that things started changing on the Freewinds, right? Where it started to get more and more heavy ethics. Is that right, Scott and Karry?
Most definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Mark, you and I had already left the Sea Org at this point.
Right.
And they 94, 96, whatever, they were using it and sending senior executives there, having them work down in the bilges of the ship and doing the dirtiest work they could find. And, no one had any time off or anything like that. They probably had no pay or a quarter pay. A quarter pay is $17, Anyway, so things were getting worse and worse on the ship. And Scott and Karry were having to live through this. So, Scott, let's go over to you and you start telling us what started happening with you leading up to you leaving the Freewinds.
Well, so essentially, I just started noticing like what they were doing to get money from the public, And, they had this thing called the OT debug service, where they would do like an ethics handling on the public. And, always whatever the handling was, it would always include making big donations in order to make amends for whatever the sort of ethical lapse or moral lapse was. And go ahead.
So it was no longer about Scientology. It was more about making money and getting donations and to hell with getting people doing actual Scientology to help them.
Yeah. But I mean, that wasn't, it was becoming apparent to me, but the rest of the crew, I'm sure most of the people there, they still thought, oh, we're clearing the planet. We're doing the right thing. They're on a crusade to help mankind, but I started to see through that, and, and then at that same time, Mark just showed that picture. Can you go back to that picture, Mark?
Sure.
Okay, so that at that same time, Karry, and that's the Key to Life and Life Orientation course team, she became one of the supervisors that was delivering those 2 courses to the public that would come to the ship, right? Well, on those courses, they had, something where the person would write up basically transgressions against all 21 departments of their personal organization, right? Which they had this whole prefabricated organization and all of these categories of transgressions that you could write up. And, basically people are confessing to all kinds of stuff, like all kinds of like financial, fraud and business fraud, insurance fraud, things like that. Taking out a bunch of credit cards and maxing them out, donating everything to the church, declaring bankruptcy, and all kinds of other ethical stuff too,
Right.
And so Karry is seeing this stuff, right? And I've seen it too from participating in some of the OT debug ethics handlings. And we're looking at things differently now because these people are the Scientologists that are at the very top of the bridge. And, to see that they were doing all of these unethical things to get there, it was very disillusioning,
Yeah, I'll bet.
I had started complaining about it. I had just finished an auditing grade called Grade 0, which is communication release.
Right.
So, and it's like, the ability and willingness to communicate with anyone on any subject. So I'm like complaining about this and stuff, and basically the whole attitude, all the feedback that I'm getting is, yeah, that's right. We have to clean this up. We have to handle it. So I'm kind of like, documenting stuff in my mind and trying to gather evidence where I can. And I'm thinking about, presenting some sort of report that will get this malfeasance handled, And, so I'm going in that direction. And, whoever it was, the chief engineer, the captain, the commanding officer, the Commodore's messenger, whoever it was that I was complaining to seemed to be sympathetic to my complaints, But apparently, that they at the point at which I became a threat, then things changed, when I threatened to expose what they were doing to the outside world, then, the gun swung around and pointed at me.
And you mean the outside world, like senior management and away from the Freewinds? Is that what you're talking about?
No, not even that. Like my stepsister was a very highly placed FBI agent.
Oh, I see.
At the time. And my cousin on my dad's side was very high in the State Department. He was, the deputy director of the U.S. Diplomatic Courier Service, and, I guess considering whatever interaction the church has had with the government in the past, they took that threat seriously. So,
and what year, just what time period are we talking about, just to orient our viewers?
This was late 92, early 98. Late 92, early 93 rather. Yeah.
Okay.
And so
and you're on the ship, and the ship is do you remember where the ship was located at that time?
It was just mostly Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, the regular islands.
The regular route, yeah.
Regular ports that it went to. It would go over to the West Indies sometimes. So at some point, the staff auditor on the ship, Owen Starkey, got involved, and he's the younger brother, or was he the older brother of Norman or younger?
I think older.
I think
older brother of Norman Starkey. So Norman Starkey was L. Ron Hubbard's trustee for his estate, and so his brother Owen Starkey was a staff auditor on the ship. And I don't know if he decided to do it or somebody told him to do it. And I kind of get, you'll see that I got the idea that somebody told him to do it. I was down in the comm center, which is the communication center, and I saw Owen down there, and he said something about some situation. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, what in the hell is going on here? You know, and said I couldn't figure it out, you know, what the out ethics was and stuff. And he goes, you want to know what's going on? Come with me. And he took me to his auditing room. And there he proceeded to do what's called black Dianetics on me. And if I may, I'll read a definition of black Dianetics from the Dianetics.
Please do.
Yeah.
Technical dictionary. Okay.
Okay.
So there's the dictionary, and the definition. It says black Dianetics. Definition number 1 is hypnotism, right? And that's all it says. And then definition number 2, there are those who, to control, resort to narcotics, suggestion, gossip, slander, the thousands of overt and covert ways that can be classified as black Dianetics. And then regarding black Dianetics, there's an article from 1952 about black Dianetics. And it says, this is an article that L. Ron Hubbard wrote in 1952. So the opening line is, death, insanity, aberration, or merely a slavish obedience can be efficiently affected by the use of black Dianetics. Further, adequate laws do not exist at this time to bar the use of these techniques. The law provides that only the individual so wronged can make a complaint or swear out a warrant for offenders using these techniques. A person on whom black Dianetics has been employed seldom retains the sanity or will to make a complaint, or does not know that he has been victimized. And it goes on explaining what it is, you know. So, you know, basically what he did is he performed that on me and induced me hypnotically and basically left me in that state. Didn't, you know, implanted a post-hypnotic suggestion and didn't bring me out of it. So,
and you didn't know that was happening to you at the
No.
time, right? You found out about black Dianetics later.
later.
Much later.
Yeah. Highly trained auditor at one point when I was telling him what the guy did, he said, oh, you don't want to mess around with that. That's black Dianetics. And I said, it's too late. You know, it was already done to me, you know?
Right.
So essentially when that is done to someone, you know, remember it said death, insanity, aberration, or merely a slavish obedience can be efficiently affected with black Dianetics. You're kind of a ticking time bomb, right? And then the operator, which was Owen, you know, knows what the suggestion is, you know, the post-hypnotic suggestion, and can induce the person thereafter, you know. And that's right here in the L. Ron Hubbard book, Science of Survival. So what they were doing after that, well, you know what? I'll explain this later, and I'll read that definition later.
Okay.
So what happened was, you know, it didn't drive me insane right away. But and I even went and complained to the commanding officer of the Commodore's messenger organization on the ship, Jennifer Alpers. That's Jennifer Alpers saluting me and promoting me to an officer on the ship. So I went and complained to her about what Owen did. And she said, I know, that was wrong. He shouldn't have done that. He's been up lines. He's been corrected on that. But, you know, I was on the executive council of the ship, and I knew that. So Owen had gone up lines to the international headquarters before doing it, and then again after doing it. So that's why I'm suspicious that he was directed to do it.
Right.
You know, so the fact that it didn't drive me insane right away was, you know, maybe a problem. But so what started happening was, you know, I started getting sent on different projects and missions and different assignments that were like high pressure, high priority projects, you know. So I wasn't getting enough sleep for probably 6 or 7 or 8 months, like little to no sleep every night, 2 to 3 hours or nothing, you know. So meanwhile, everything that occurred between then and when I did have the psychotic break was, you know, it was leading up to the maiden voyage anniversary for 1993, which I actually got sent out to help book the maiden voyage anniversary as part of one of the projects that they sent me on, you know. And, you know, when we then started the voyage, it was the only time that the ship came through the Panama Canal and came up the west coast of Mexico, all the way to the top, up to Ensenada, you know, right by the Mexico-California border. And while we were there, and after the maiden voyage was over, before we left to go back to the Caribbean, I received a phone call from my dad that my grandmother was in the hospital on her deathbed. And everyone was there, and I needed to go there to be with her, you know, and she was asking for me, you know. And this, just to give you an idea, this lady was like the matriarch of our family, you know.
Right.
We grew up spending every Sunday night going to dinner at her house, you know. So it was important, not only to my family, but to me personally as well, you know.
Of course. Yeah.
And go ahead.
You were in Ensenada at this time?
Yes.
And she lived there in California, in Laguna?
Yeah, up in Northern California.
So it's not that far. It's not that far to go. Okay.
No, yeah. Very short plane flight away. But so, yeah, so what happened was I applied for a leave of absence to go see her, you know.
Right.
And it got denied. And, you know, so that became a real problem for me, because the pressure on me from my family was escalating. You know, it was basically, my dad was on the phone like, I don't care what the fuck they say, get your ass on a plane this instant, you know, that kind of thing, you know. And so at some point I just thought, well, I'm going to leave and go get somewhere and then, you know, have him bring me up there or whatever. somehow get up there. So, you know, and I was one of the people that could go on and off the ship without having to have permission beforehand, you know.
Right.
But I couldn't get my passport, and our passports are locked up in a safe in the ship's representative office and in the port captain's office, you know. So I just had my clothes and my wallet, and that was it, you know. And I was going to go somewhere and call my dad and have him help me get there, you know. Well, I guess after a little while, they figured out that I had left without the intention of coming back right away.
So you actually left you actually got off the ship and went into town in Ensenada or whatever, and you were going to contact your dad to come and get you to go up there. And your intention was to come back. You were just going to go up there for the funeral and come back. Is that right?
Yes. And so they sent a couple of security guards and an auditor to come and find me. And they did find me.
Where were you?
I was pretty far away from the ship.
Okay.
I had walked to where I was out of sight of the ship, and then I got a taxi. I told the guy to take me to a bus station. You know, but so he took me a certain distance and then said the bus station's over there. And when I got out of the taxi, you know, those guys were there. So somehow they
probably figured, oh, well, he's going to go to a bus station or a train station or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
you know, these people are just so stupid. They don't even realize that they create this situation themselves by not letting you go and see a dying family member.
Right.
You know, but they create it so you end up feeling you have to leave without permission.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly true. I'll give you a good example of that. My friend Bill Strauss, who just passed away back in the beginning of November, tried to get off the ship to go to his parents' 50th wedding anniversary, which was going to flop if he didn't go. And they wouldn't let him go. And at some point, you know, when he was up talking to the captain about it, the captain screamed in his face, "I don't give a fuck about family." Right? You know, so that is that. That is the attitude. They want you to relegate your family to very low importance compared to the organization.
Right.
You know. So
they met you at the bus station. Go ahead.
Yeah, they didn't meet me. They, you know, tried to manhandle me to get into a taxi, and I got into a fight with them, and was actually winning the fight with them. And then this guy, a guy named Karry Campbell, he got me to calm down, and told me that we just had to go back and go on the leave. Standardly, we had to do the, you know, leaving routing form, you know. Okay. So I went back with them. And that was supposed to be what was happening, right? So when I do go back, they had me go in my cabin and said, okay, you got to go in your cabin. And, you know, and then someone will come and see you about the routing form, you know. Okay, so I was in my cabin, and I hear stuff going on out in the hallway and stuff, and I look out there, and there's 2 security guards out there, you know. And
been there.
Yeah. And then I come out, and it's the cabins that we were in were officers' cabins. There was only 3 cabins in that little section. So on one end, there's a watertight door. It's a big, heavy steel door that's actually watertight. Like if you close it, it closes off that compartment. It's in case the ship hits something and water floods the compartment. That isolates that compartment from the rest of the ship, you know. And then on the other end, another watertight door. And then at the top of the stairwell, a fire door, a locking fire door. And then in the, there was like an empty dormitory space over between my cabin and the other watertight door. And there was a hatch, there was a ladder with an escape hatch there, right? Well, all of those things were locked, closed. So I'm like, what the hell is going on here, you know? And it was given what they call an R factor, that I was confined to my cabin for now because, you know, I had attempted to blow, you know. Also, eventually they start doing the leaving routing for them with security checks and stuff like that. But at some point, I'm informed that, you know, it's not going to happen. And, you know, and then we have to get ready. We're going to sail back down the west coast of Mexico and all of this stuff, right? Well, so that actually happens. And I'm confined to my cabin and you know, various interactions with the security guards and trying to break out of the place somehow, and actually did break the they had the hatch chained closed on the other side, and I managed to break the chain or break the lock that was holding the chain together and try to get out of there. But then there's a bunch of guys like piling on it, smashing it onto my hands, my fingers and stuff, you know. So I had to withdraw from that. And then they got the welder to weld the dog closed, you know.
No.
Hey, Scott, did they tell you why they were locking you up? Was it like unknown to you as to why?
Well, because of that, I had tried to blow.
Oh, you tried to leave unauthorized, so they were locking you up.
Well, I was confined to my cabin until it was sorted out. Whatever they were telling me, just some, you know, some bullshit reason. They had no intention of letting me go anywhere.
No.
And where would you, Karry? Well, they've got him locked up.
They told me that I needed to go in a different cabin until whatever was going on was handled. They didn't
Did they tell you he had blown?
No, I didn't even know he was off the ship. I had no idea. I didn't know that until, gosh, probably until after we got back from after all this is finished. I didn't know.
So Scott, you didn't even tell Karry you were going to go see your grandmother?
No, I didn't. Because I figured that could have been trouble too.
Okay.
Oh, been there, done that. Been there, done that. Yeah. No, we know. We know
if Karry would have mentioned it to anybody.
Yeah, and then it would stop you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So, you know, and I figured, I just figured that
I
would come back and I'd deal with the trouble. Whatever,
right.
You know. So at some point, now I would say probably over a week, maybe closer to 2 weeks had gone by with this situation of me being confined in my cabin.
2 weeks.
Yeah. And one time we were at sea, and that same auditor that came and found me with the 2 security guards came and escorted me, also with security guards, up to the promenade deck. And so we were out there on the promenade deck when the ship was sailing and looking out over the ocean. And he said, you know, I have some bad news for you. Your grandmother passed away, you know. So that was devastating to me. And I remember, you know, crying and he said something like, we'll get this straightened out, you know, and, you know, we have to go back down now. And so they escorted me back down. And I remember as I was going down that last flight of stairs to my cabin. You know, the situation with my grandma and all the other stuff and all the pressures and the black Dianetics being done to me prior to all of this, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, you know, the news of her death. And somehow I just snapped and, you know, I was like, wave bye-bye. And I just lost my mind. I went into a complete psychotic break, you know, and it was terrible. I was totally crazy. Yet I still had the determination to escape. My escape efforts became, you know, they escalated to the point of where, you know, I was stripping the walls down to the bare steel bulkheads, you know, stripping the ceilings, the false ceilings off the ceilings, everything, anything to find a place to get out of wherever they had me confined, you know.
So they took you back down and locked you up again?
Yes. And at some point, they wanted to use those 3 cabins again. So they wanted me to move to this empty dormitory, which was the former officer training school dormitory. So they had like all the biggest guys on the ship come in there and try to get me out of my cabin and into that dormitory. And that was like a titanic battle that went on for like a couple of hours. And during the time, the ship had to sail, and they call conditional and docking stations, which is what they call when the ship is about to sail from one point to the next.
Right.
Well, all of those people had posts that they had to man in order to be able to sail the ship. So then they wanted to leave the cabin. And I was like, let's go. So they quit like attacking me and trying to get me out of the cabin. And I was like, what's going on? They were like, we have to go. We have to go to our post. And I said, oh, you want to leave? You know, and I didn't let them leave for probably half an hour or more.
Well, docking stations is going on.
They weren't very happy about that. You can imagine. It was, the battle continued. And once again, this guy, Scott Kimball, came, and he was at the door on the outside, knocking on the door and calling my name, and, you know, whatever it was. It finally, you know, I opened the door and let all those guys out. And then he talked me into going over to this other space where they had me confined, you know. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of details to this that I could tell, but I mean, just suffice to say that, you know, these, just to let you know what it's like to be insane, you know, the guards pepper sprayed me a couple of times.
Wow.
Right. And for me, it was like, wow, that's spicy, you know, but for them, it was more harmful to the person that sprayed me than it was to me, you know?
Yeah.
But so, you know, at that time, that was the beginning of it. So I was a big, strong, muscular guy. You know, I could lift like 400 pounds, you know?
Right.
So, you know, so, you know, as time went on, at some point, I figured out that they were drugging me, and later on was told by Dr. Megan Shields that the drugs I asked her what drugs they were giving me, and she said it was Chloralhydrate and diazepam, which is Valium.
They were putting that in your food or in your drink, or how were they drugging you?
In my food and drink.
Okay, yeah. Both. All right.
And it was supposed to tranquilize me, but one of the things about Chloralhydrate is it's a narcosynthesis drug. It's used for drug-induced hypnosis. And right here in the L. Ron Hubbard book, Science of Survival.
Yep.
It says, drug hypnotism does not have to be done with the individual's consent. An individual who is drugged can receive and will obey hypnotic commands given to him by the doctor or operator, and will continue to obey these commands after waking from the drug sleep. By using the method of dropping a heavy sedative, such as chloralhydrate, into an individual's drink, by suddenly muzzling him with a silk scarf from behind and injecting morphine into his arm, or by discovering the individual when he is drunk or shortly after has been operated upon during an operation, or during the administration of electric shock or sedation in an insane asylum, drug hypnosis can be induced. So,
wow.
So they were giving me.
This is L. Ron Hubbard. Unbelievable. Anyway, go ahead.
But is he actually saying to do that, or he's just saying that's what can be done?
In the essay that he wrote specifically on Black Dianetics, he said it's only to be used against individuals who are attempting to keep Scientology hidden from view.
Oh, okay.
There's that,
okay.
You know.
An SP.
An SP or whatever. So whatever they considered me to be an SP, I guess, at that point,
right.
Because I was going to.
But they actually considered that you were mentally having a breakdown. Like they considered from their point of view that you had gone psychotic, I guess, right? So they were trying to drug you and keep you there.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing that led to the whole thing was when Owen Starkey did the Black Dianetics.
Right.
He made you successful.
It included things like I was saying, well, we should make some reports and send them up to international management and stuff. And it was like, you know, if you did that, the only thing they would do is open a file on you. You know?
It's amazing to think that just wanting to go say goodbye to grandma, all this came out of that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
It is insane.
You know?
That's the insanity. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
So, you know.
So anyway, so you were saying you figured out they were drugging you.
It wasn't just because, you know, I was going to see my grandma. It was because I had said this whole thing is a snake's nest of lies, deceit, and corruption. And I
get it.
You know, it was that too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were moving you from one cabin to the next, I take it. So is that what they did next?
Yeah. So, okay. So I was in there, you know, and these were the amenities that I had. This is a big space with no bathroom facilities, nothing. I had a 5-gallon bucket. That was all I had in there. You know. And somebody would get it when I was sleeping or out of commission somehow. They were giving me ridiculous amounts of this chloralhydrate. And, you know,
while you were drugged.
Yeah, I looked at it after, you know, Megan Shields told me about it, you know, the drug warnings and side effects and all that stuff. And it said that, you know, over a certain dosage could cause significant brain damage, you know, stuff like that, you know. So chloralhydrate, you know, it's used for drug-induced hypnosis. And then the diazepam, which is Valium, if you give a high dose of that, it causes the person to forget what happened. It causes what's called anterograde amnesia. So it causes you to forget what happened, you know. So, you know, eventually they moved me to a third space. And in the third space, Owen Starkey started coming to get me. And he would take me out of that space, escorted by a couple of security guards. Meanwhile, the security guards could handle me because I had lost all my weight. I was down to like 140 something pounds, and I was just weak as a kitten, you know. So if I tried to act out, they could manhandle me pretty easily, you know. So he'd take me back to the poop deck, and as we would go through the door, he'd say, "Okay, Scott." And apparently that was whatever he said, was what would induce me into the hypnotic state. And then he would say stuff to me, and they're just big blank periods for me, because then I would wake up later on back down in the space where he had gotten me from, not realizing what happened. And the only one I've recovered. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask Karry, what did they tell you? I mean, this apparently had been over a little bit of period of time. I mean, you obviously couldn't go see your husband.
Yeah,
I know. What did they tell you was going on?
They basically told me that he had gone type 3 and that I couldn't talk to him at all. So
type 3 means like a psychotic break. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. Basically, and the only way I could talk to him is through writing letters through the person that was,
the case supervisor.
The case.
Yeah.
So, they didn't tell me I was living in another area, and I was just worried all the time because I didn't know, as a wife, you're like, okay, did you eat? Did you sleep? It's kind of like.
And the answer was no.
Yeah. And he lost a lot of his weight because, when he figured out that he was being drugged, he refused to eat for a considerable amount of time. And then they were thinking that he was going to be dead soon. So Bill Strauss came and saw me and said, "Hey, Scotty hasn't eaten for about 7 days." And I'm like, "Excuse me?"
I haven't eaten or drank anything.
So
So they basically used what they did with you. That's that whole Lisa Fiss, and the same thing repeated later.
Was the same
same
protocol. They had her also on chloralhydrate and diazepam.
Right.
And I was actually lucky that I didn't die, because that combination of drugs actually causes severe dehydration. And it
you weren't drinking.
Dehydration in Lisa McPherson to the extent that her heart stopped.
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen pictures of her.
Yes.
At the time of death.
Yeah.
Terrible. Right. So I wasn't far removed from that at some point. I was like that, It did a lot of damage to me,
Yeah. Wow. See, when I was locked up for 11 days, I wondered if when they gave me the vitamins, if everything was okay, and I would check each vitamin, but I don't think they drugged me or anything like that for my 11 days. They just, locked me up in a room with a guard.
I think they drugged me because of, every time I had an opportunity, it was like a violent escape attempt.
You were physically a threat.
Okay,
They would have to overwhelm me.
You were going to fight back, and you were big, and they're like going, "We need to control him." Probably. And that's not to justify it, but that's probably what happened.
Yeah, I can't describe how offensive that treatment was to me. It was like I was outraged, but that.
And you had every right to be.
Right. So, one of the things I recall happening was when Owen Starkey came and got me, and then I came back down in the area where they had me confined, and I just started repeating over and over again everything, like every address that I had ever lived at from when I was a little kid. Like, your mind records everything. So from when I was like 2, the address, the phone number, the names of my family members, the neighbors, anybody, by the time I got to school age, my schoolmates, teachers' names, everything up to the. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You can finish what you were saying, but I was going to say, at what point did they get you off the ship? Like, what did they do? I mean, what was the next step that happened?
Well, just to finish what I was saying, when I told that story to Marty Rathman one time about this, just repeating over and over again, everything would wind up to where I said my driver's license number, social security number, and then passport number. Who remembers their passport number? But I was saying this over and over again, and Marty said, you better believe all of that was recorded, and that's like data mining for the Office of Special Affairs to use potentially against me in the future, Well, so that was one of the things, but at some point, this is a period of time over several months between like July 93 and November 93.
Wow.
And at some point, they determined to send me off the ship out to the Pacific Area Command Base, which is in Hollywood, California.
Right.
And,
that's the big blue Cedars-Sinai, big blue building, old hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just a process of telling me that the night before, and then the next day, sending me off, putting me on a taxi, had two big guys that were escorting me, and that flew from whatever island we were at to New York. And then from New York, took the red eye all the way to Los Angeles,
Karry, did you go with him at that time, or did you follow later?
No, I saw him right before he left the ship, and I was totally shocked. He was, skinny as a rail, and he still looked like this. It was just like no resemblance to my husband. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just like super scary. And he said he had to go and he's going to pack, and he loves me. And that was like the first time I'd seen him since July, and that was in November. And it was it was like very scary. And then after he left, the CMO ship, Jennifer
Alpers,
right, brought me into her office and said, so Scott is going to Los Angeles. Do you want to go there? And I said, well, isn't he coming back to the ship? I'll just wait for him, to come back, whatever he needs to do and whatever. And she goes, he's not coming back. And so, you need to divorce him. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen ever. Just like, really? It's like, I'm not here for you guys. I'm here for him. You don't understand that. So, I was like, no, I'm not going to divorce him whatsoever. And they said, okay, so you need to go turn over your job to somebody else. And that's what I did. And then they put me on messed work,
Messed work is where you're doing physical labor.
Right. Scrubbing the floors or whatever it is. And so about 4 or 5 days I was doing that until they got me a flight to go to where Scott was in California. So, and then I got there in California, and I thought I was just going to go have a job there. And they said, well, we don't have a job, but you need to go talk to the CMO PAC, which is
Nettie Alcock.
And
Commodore's messenger organization in Los Angeles.
I'm so used to saying the short version. So I went there and I, waited for her to talk to me. And she pulled me in her office and she goes, okay, so Scott's going to go on the RPF, which is
Rehabilitation Project Force.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so what do you need from me? She goes, I want you to be his buddy, twin. You can do the courses with him to get him through it. I said, anything to help him get through this and get him back into, doing what we were doing in the first place, making the planet better or whatever.
Right.
What we were all there for.
Meanwhile, they never let her, only a few times let her see me even,
So what were you doing while they had him? I guess they had you locked up still, and they.
Yeah. So, I was completely insane. So I couldn't do the RPF, It was,
You needed to destimulate.
Yeah. So what they did with me was they put me down in and this is part of the other agenda thing too, whatever was going on. They put me down in the medical waste incinerator room, down in the bowels of the the Lebanon Hall building, which is part of the old Cedars of Lebanon hospital complex that the church bought and took over, And, so it's like a dungeon, basically.
It felt that way.
Been there.
Felt like a dungeon.
That whole floor was scary. You walk in, it was like heebie-jeebies going up your skin as you were walking.
Well, it's like they had the old morgue underground down there too.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of disembodied spirits floating around that place.
Right.
Yeah.
Ghosts.
Yeah.
Ghosts. Yeah. So,
thank you for clarifying. Clarifying.
So, whatever was happening, they were trying to either break me somehow or get me to commit suicide, because they had the auditor come in and they're doing security checks on me, which was like interrogations where they're just grilling you about all kinds of stuff that's like super outrageous. Are you from the CIA? Who sent you? Are you here to destroy the Church of Scientology? Are you here to destroy David Miscavige? That in itself was interesting to me, because why would they ask if you're here to destroy David Miscavige? It's like,
but did they not do a PAB 3 on you, which is where you're supposed to just go out and do a locational and look at things and just kind of try and calm your thoughts down?
No. If they took me outside, I would try to escape.
Okay.
And just to give you an idea of how far away I got a couple of times. One time I made it from there to the Griffith Park Observatory.
Oh,
how far away that is.
A long way. That's a long way.
And not only that, a really long uphill, right?
Yes.
Well, then I have to ask you, how did they get you on the plane and fly you without you escaping? Did they drug you, or what did they do?
They were pretty intelligent about that. They got my best friend, Bill Strauss, to be one of the people that went with me.
Okay.
Okay.
So you weren't going to try anything with him?
Yeah.
It was an adventure.
Yeah.
That's an impressive break. If you got from the complex all the way up to the observatory, that's impressive. Because I used to hike that every time I'd stay with Karen de la Carrier. I'd always hike up there. So I know that distance.
Not only that, I was evading capture the entire time.
Oh, wow.
There were guys following me in a car and getting out periodically and running and trying to tackle me and stuff. And I was staying away from them, staying ahead of them. So,
Okay, so that explains why they didn't take you for a walk.
Another time I made it from the PAC base all the way down to the 101 freeway and I was running
Okay.
down the side of the freeway.
Oh, wow.
And they got me. It was two guys, two security guards,
Crazy.
one of whom was Roy Rodriguez. And what had happened is a highway patrol guy or a sheriff, some police officer pulled over and, was questioning me and stuff. And I said, oh, well, I'm trying to get home to my mom. She lives down in Newport Beach, and just then the two security guards from the PAC base pulled up, and one of them went with the cop. The other one took me, was telling me, don't go with them. They'll put you in a mental institution. They'll give you all kinds of psychiatric drugs, blah, blah, blah. So he scared me into not going with them. And then they took me back. They took me to Tommy Burgers first.
Nothing like a Tommy burger.
Yeah.
That's true.
Which was that, and that's the first one I ever had, by the way.
Mhm.
So,
Oh.
yeah. But prior to that, what you're eating on the RPF is like the leftovers of other people's food, like the food scraps that they don't eat from their plate.
Right. Right.
It's just, Go ahead.
Anyway, so carry on about, you were down in the bowels of the Lebanon Hall and all that.
Yeah. So they're doing these interrogations on me. And at some point, a couple of fellow RPF members came and got me. I don't know their last names. Their first names are Danny and Zeb. And they got me and they took me in an elevator, the elevator in Lebanon Hall, to the top of that building, which I think is either like 9 or 11 stories tall.
It's not tall. That. It's like 7 or 8 stories tall.
Is that what
it is
okay.
Tall. Yeah.
So that's how tall it is. They took me up to the roof of that and walked me back over to the back edge of the roof on the back side of the building, where the security offices are. And they looked down over the edge of the building and had me look down, and we're like, it's a long way down. The only thing down below, right below where they had me, was a big concrete pad with a drain in the middle of it, And I got the idea, they want me to jump off of here, And,
Wow.
I just steeled myself against that. And I was like, yep, a long way down, and I looked at the guy and he kind of looked right at me. And I said, this guy, Zeb, I said, you don't even know anything about me, do you? And he said, no, why? Tell me about yourself, And I told him what I had done, leading up to that point to establish the Freewinds Ship Organization, and actually get all the personnel, get the ship, establish the organizations which Janis was personally involved with, It's a huge accomplishment, And he got it, and he said, I didn't even know that, he said, that's impressive. He said, you know what? No one can take that away from you. And he said, let's go. So we went back down,
That is impressive, Scott. What you accomplished is impressive.
I was proud of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so then we went back, and the next thing that they did, not too long after that, they had an auditor come in again. And so they had her basically push buttons on my case, something that had happened before, where, Karry had an abortion. When we first got to the ship, she wasn't on the pill or anything, and the medical liaison officer gave her some condoms that were there in the doctor's office, and but they were old. One of them broke, and Karry got pregnant. Right. Well, the Sea Org had a policy that if that happens, you have to leave the Sea Org. Have to leave the Sea Organization and go to a lower organization.
Yeah, that was a David Miscavige policy, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so it was like early on in the pregnancy, you know, with only within a couple of weeks of her getting pregnant, that she noticed something was different right away. And she missed her period when she would have had it, you know. But so she had an abortion. You know, we decided to do that because we weren't ready to leave yet, you know. And so at this later date, they had the auditor come into that room and basically use that to do what they call cave you in, you know, where they bring it up and using guilt and shame. Meanwhile, it's their policy, right?
Right.
You know, to basically cave me in mentally. And then this time, 2 security guards came and got me. And they took me in this elevator, again, the same elevator that takes you up to the top of the building, except this time when I got in the elevator, there was an Asian gentleman in the elevator, and he was dressed in a nice suit, like a 3-piece suit, and he had a coat hanger, wire coat hanger. It was a nice one of those padded ones with the silk ribbon around it and stuff. And he was holding it and had this kind of enigmatic Mona Lisa smile on his face. And then the 2 security guards, one was across from me and the other one was across from that Asian gentleman. And, you know, I wasn't saying anything, but I was looking at him like, what the hell? What is this? You know, just bizarre. And the security guard says to him, hey, that's a nice hanger. And the Asian guy says, he's got it like this. And he says, yes, it is. It's a present. I'm bringing it to my mother. And this is hard for me to say. I can't not get emotional when I say it. The security guard said, wow, that's not like the one my mother gave me. When my mother gave me, it was all rusty and jagged, implying that his mother tried to abort him with a rusty coat hanger. Right?
Right.
And they took me up to the top of that building, and they walked over to that same spot that the other 2 guys did. And same thing, took me over and looked down, and I said, it's a long way down, you know. And it was about, I'm going to say the middle of the night, had to be 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, something. It was dark, you know. And I actually thought about it. I came real close to just diving over the side, you know.
Right.
And you know, something came over me and I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. And I just said, is that why we came up here? You know, look at the sky. It's a nice night. Look at the stars. Right. Is that why we're up here? And they just looked at each other and gave up and took me back downstairs, you know. And then after that, anytime anybody tried to interact with me, even with food or anything, I would just, you know, I would try to get out, and I would also say, you have to let me out. I want to ride out. I want to leave. You know, and I would just kept saying that over and over and over. And finally, I think after a couple weeks or so, they said that I was going to be allowed to leave. You know. Good. And then they did let us leave and took us up to a conference room on one part of the building, and they had a video camera on a tripod there, and there was an attorney there and some other people there, and they had me sign a whole bunch of documents, you know, release of liability stuff. And then we were, and they did the same thing with Karry, by the way.
Yeah, we didn't read it, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I would
But
love
at
to
what-
see that. I would love to see that video, because
Yeah, but
you would have seen somebody that was absolutely physically and mentally destroyed signing those
Yeah.
papers, you know.
wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Scott, at what point did they finally let Karry see you?
right then.
Oh, you hadn't seen her up until that point where
I
you're
had
both
seen
now
her a few
signing to
times.
leave?
I had seen her a few times, but only briefly.
Yeah. And I wasn't supposed to say any words or anything like that. It was in the, you know, in the incinerator room, and they always had a padlock on it. So, you know, you couldn't escape and whatever. And it was definitely horrifying.
So they were letting you see him, and you were both to sign papers, and they were going to send you out with someone that they couldn't even deal with.
Yeah.
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 Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't doing PAB 6 handling or anything at that point. They were,
Right.
you know,
They
whatever.
were getting rid of you.
They were trying to get me to fucking kill myself, you know.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
well, and then get rid of you. At that point, they wanted you out of
Yeah.
their lives. So
I
what
mean-
happened? So then you guys signed all these papers?
Yeah, we signed them, and then you know, we were allowed to leave. And Karry called her parents, who lived, you know, about an hour or so north of Los Angeles, up in Rosamond, California, and we went there to stay with them. But they quickly, you know, saw that I was, you know, totally unhandled, you know. And,
Right.
you know, so then Karry's dad wrote a report saying, you know, what did you guys do to Scott? You know, I remember he used the phrase, he's a shell of his former self, you know.
Because
Yeah,
he was a Scientologist.
Yes, Karry's family are all Scientologists. And, you know, and then they said, okay, well, the church said, okay, bring him back, you know. So
Oh, hold on. Oh, wow. After all that, they get rid of you, and now they're asking you to come back.
yeah. So,
Wow.
you know, and Karry didn't really know any of this stuff at all.
Right.
Like,
Right.
she had been kept away from me enough that she thought, well, this is the solution. Bring them back, and they'll fix it. Right. But
Okay.
So,
All right.
So this is where we're gonna end this as part one, and we're gonna do part two for all of our viewers. So I just wanted to give everybody a little break. Just one thing I wanted to say, to like on a positive note, okay, that Karry and Scott, you did have children, right, after you left the Sea Org, right?
Yes.
And they're adults, successful, and all that. Is that right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
how
great. I
many
just
years
wanted
have you
people
been
to know.
married?
It'll be 38 years in July.
38
Yeah.
years. Good for
Yeah.
you.
So I didn't want to leave our viewers with a, you know, like thinking, oh, everything's horrible. No, it ends up, there's a good ending to this story, but we're just going to take a break here. We're an hour and 10 minutes in here. And
The good ending is that you're here talking to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're alive, and we're here talking to you.
sorry about that. I had to deal with my dog, Misha. But anyway, for our viewers, okay, you know, we're going to come right back, and it'll be out as a separate video, but this is going to be the end of part one. Okay. And then you're not going to believe what you hear in part two. Okay. And then there is a happy ending at the end. So stick with us, please. Please, if you would like, please subscribe to our channel. Okay. And if you, you know, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and all that sort of stuff. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to end this part one, and then we're going to start part two in just a few minutes. Okay.
Get yourself a drink for part two.
Absolutely. And if you have questions or
You're gonna
comments,
need
again, please ask in the questions and comments down below. But wait for part 2. You're going to want to see what happens next. Okay. Anyway, we want to thank you all for being here and for watching our show. And until part 2, hold on, I got to get this off the screen here. Until part 2, what did I just do? There we go. Until part 2, we'll see you shortly. Okay.